No dream is anyhow, anyway, too small. And those were some wonderful words from Mr. Piyush Shah, co founder of the InMobi Group. In fact, we are very inspired by his story of never giving up and rising from failures. Everything that he has said this afternoon has been noted down duly, and we'll take care of it. We'll continue to be inspired by his story. Now, ever since the lockdowns worldwide lifted, life has been functioning in hybrid mode. We may be driving to an in person meeting in the morning and have Zoom on side by side to attend another simultaneous Zoom meeting on the phone. Now, Zooming and driving is not recommended, but I'm sure you get the picture here. If it all is anything we've done, we've been resilient and we've gone on to innovate and adapt. Now, take for instance this very virtual avatar of TiECon Chandigarh 2021. Now, you may be finishing up a report in office while also being logged into this event on the side. Hybrid mode at workplace again. The point is, business, resilience, and innovation will all now go hand in hand henceforth for as long as we can imagine, and hybrid is the new normal, definitely. Welcome to this innovative and hybrid conversation, and let's now invite our speaker and moderator on the dais. Our speaker is highly recognized for building high growth teams globally at leading Silicon Valley companies, and currently he is, hold your breath, head of international at Zoom Video Communications. Now, that's such a different feeling to be welcoming Mr. Abe Smith on the very platform he and his team have so refined to help organizations and businesses be connected and make their teams happier and better and faster. And bringing the best out of this conversation is going to be our moderator, Mr. Manish Johar, a person who's living the tech dream. He's the founder and CEO of Graycell Technologies, an award-winning digital solutions company with over 15 years of experience guiding businesses through the digital landscape. Over to you, Manish, sir, and Mr. Abe Smith to take this conversation forward. And I'm quite looking forward to it. I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting one. Over to you.
Good morning, Abe. Thank you for
Hi,
joining us all the way.
hi, Manish. Nice
Hi,
to see you. Thank you for including me.
pleasure. And let me introduce you to our audience. Folks, very privileged to host Mr. Abe Smith, who's the head of international at Zoom Incorporated. Zoom, by now, probably all of you know, I'm quite sure it's already as a noun in the dictionary, but Zoom as a company has really, I mean, the last year probably Zoom will soon become a verb, basically, if I'm not wrong. I hope we'll get there. I would really like to thank you once again for joining us this early in the morning and taking time out. Pleasure to host you.
Nice to see you. Thank you. No, we love the organization at TIE and happy to be a part of it. So we really
Awesome.
appreciate you including us. Thank you.
Pleasure. So our topic of discussion today is business resilience and innovation in the new hybrid normal, right? So I'll briefly just set a little context, Abe, and then we can kind of we can start with the discussion. Basically, the tools for remote working have always been around. You know, we've all been using it on and off, basically. But since last year, we have kind of seen, I don't know, we've seen pretty much 2 decades of growth happening in within 2 months as soon as the onset of the pandemic happened. And as I was saying, we've never seen this kind of thing where everything pretty much has now moved to a remote kind of environment and everything is digital. And it's literally like the change happened overnight, right? People had to I don't know, people just kind of flipped a switch and, you know, all of a sudden this became the new kind of way to communicate and progress. So, you know, things have really changed. And now that hopefully the vaccine is out and things are kind of looking a little better, so to speak, and people are kind of also contemplating now, maybe in the summers, you know, there's a lot of discussion, should businesses open, stay like that? You know, there's a lot of debate and discussion happening on this front. So I'm going to start off with the situation where it stands currently, basically. A few months ago, I was reading this article in the New York Times, you know, and the article was titled "The Future of Offices When Workers Have a Choice," right? Uh, how, you know, what is the future of offices, right? With the global vaccination drive now in full flow, many companies are starting to think about what a return to office might look like this summer and fall. So what is the future of our workspaces and whether we will be required to come back to office full time, or it will be a fully remote kind of situation, or is hybrid the new normal? How will hybrid benefit businesses in the post-COVID-19 world? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a big question, but let's
Yeah, it's a big
see
question.
let's see what I can say. I mean, I think you hit on some important things. First of all, the world is definitely a very different place here in 2021 than it was probably at the start of the beginning of 2020. But the truth is, a lot of the trends that were you could say in the works were accelerated during COVID. And those were things like the gig economy or remote work, the idea of distance learning, the concept of around a social connection or the consumer use of video becoming the new voice. We felt that there were a lot of things happening before the pandemic. And then frankly, obviously during the pandemic, a lot of that was accelerated, Manish. So there's a few thoughts. We do believe that work today and work in the future will be around choice and flexibility. A lot of people term or coin the term hybrid work. And I think really what that means is first of all, right now, while we are still in a time of transition, it is taking stock around safety and ensuring that people are safe. That's the most important concern. But then it is around providing people the maximum amount of flexibility so that they have the highest amount of productivity, but they can do so in a way that allows them to balance life. And that can include simple things like traffic and how commuting impacts your time of productiveness. That can also mean the value of having social connection in the office, but allowing you to connect with colleagues that might not be there, that might be distance. That allows us to franchise in a global workforce that might be in Delhi, but they also might be in Pune, or they might also be in other parts of the country, south of Bangalore or otherwise. So we think that the flexibility that hybrid work affords and the concept of being able to connect people in ways either in an office or at a cafe coffee day or Starbucks or anywhere around the country makes choice possible now. And that gives people the flexibility to be part of the discussion literally, and it also allows new people to be included that might not have been before. So that trend's increasing, and a lot of the things that were happening, like I said, before the pandemic, have absolutely been accelerated because of the pandemic. And we think that technology like Zoom and others affords people the chance to participate in ways that they hadn't before.
So what I kind of gather is, like you're saying, the new hybrid model is like we are now looking at something, for a lack of a better term, the best of both worlds, basically, right? There are going to be advantages on both sides, and maybe people are going to look at that flexibility to leverage both things.
I think that's absolutely right. It's difficult to say that everybody's going to stay at home and work at home forever, though. Again, the pandemic showed us that it was possible. I mean, you mentioned something at the beginning of the conversation, which is so true, that we observed. I mean, we went from at the beginning of 2020, roughly 10 million daily meeting participants on the platform, which was quite a bit, to over 300 million daily meeting participants 4 months later by April 2020. Wow. So what it showed was, on a major shift, people could work from home full time. They could go to school if necessary at home full time. For example, my children here, I have a 17-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter, and they've both been in Zoom school for the last year straight. They haven't physically gone into a classroom. Now, that's going to change and alter, but it showed it was possible. And I think you're absolutely right, is that choice is a key here. Now, it's hard to believe that people want to be 100% at home, and it's also difficult to imagine now going forward that people are going to be wanting to be 100% in the office. And generally, studies from places like Gartner have shown that that's not the case. When you survey people, more than 50% typically say that they want to mix. They want to be able to spend perhaps several days in the office, but they do expect to work from home as well during the week. So I think you're 100% right. It's flexibility and it's choice. Those are two key words that I would pinpoint on.
So as a little follow-on to the discussion that we're having, so again, like I was saying, the workplace of the future must acknowledge and embrace a more well-rounded kind of conception of home and work. That's what we were discussing right now, including valuing the full range of experiences and responsibilities that all workers face, right? In the process of adapting to this changed reality, every process, function, role basically is now being reimagined, so to speak, right? fundamentally it is change, like we said, is changing the future of work, right? Work, workforce, workspace. So in your opinion, how do you reimagine the future?
Yeah, I think the future is actually somewhat of a glimpses of what we started to see again 12, 14, 16, 24 months ago, but it's been now in full force, or it's going to be in full force. First of all, I think it is flexibility on how people connect and work together. So, today that could be something like what we're doing right now, which is I'm sitting here in my house in
Sure.
the bottom level floor, and I'm talking to you connected through Zoom on a desktop PC using a simple camera and a simple voice connection, and it's all done through voice over IP and very flexibly. What we saw is when people were on the go, there was a lot of mobility. So mobility, especially in a mobile connected economy like India, the fact that people that can connect through their device very flexibly, that could be a cell phone, for example, typically is, or it could be some kind of tablet, that can happen in the back of a cab. It could be in a tuk-tuk. It could be, frankly, anywhere they're on the go, inside, outside. That's important. So we know that people aren't necessarily tethered to a home device or a PC. They're using a mobile device. So I think mobile connectivity is really important to provide the flexibility that people want, whether that's on the go or in their house. As you start to re-enter, the idea of re-entering an office has to take on a few new considerations. So for example, we introduce concepts like virtual assistants. So when you enter an office, in the past, you might have seen a receptionist or somebody that welcomed you into the office physically. Today, we're seeing the concept of using a virtual assistant that might not be physically in the office, but still greet you through a video screen. Now, you can also do some kinds of checks, whether that's temperature checks or health checks before you enter the office itself in the space. And we think that using things like digital signage will allow people to properly navigate office without necessarily talking to individuals and getting information through video. As you start to engage with conferencing tools, it's interesting, Manish, when you think about the fact before the pandemic, in offices around the world, there was, I think the number was about 60 million conference rooms and huddle rooms, which were not video connected. Less than 5% were video enabled. So I think what you'll start to see is video and voice connecting people both inside and outside the office. So if I elect to go into the office and have a meeting where I might use a voice command to start my video call, you might elect to do it from your home and not come into the office. And we need that flexibility to be able to connect through video and through voice and other devices with employees that are both inside and outside. So I do think that the evolution will happen. It'll still take into effect safety. I think the office environment will utilize things like hot desking or more space between individuals. Social distancing, I think, will still be very important. And that kind of respect can happen, with a little bit of a balance, if you will, between where people exist and how they cohabitate.
Interesting. So, absolutely true. Your point, you're spot on. Basically, our future is basically going to now kind of boil down to mobile video and voice. Basically, this is going to become a critical element, and we probably see a lot of innovation happening in that direction. Now,
100%.
our core topic of discussion today basically was, we were talking about business resilience. Sorry. And, I wanted to talk about something called the culture of innovation, right? We've all been kind of hearing about it right now. This is the common feedback that we hear right now is that it is necessary for business resilience and faster economic recovery. And this is the mantra that has helped kind of organizations, tide over these trying times. And in terms of culture of innovation also, I mean, basically it refers to the organization's ongoing ability to respond quickly to challenges, right? And we were talking about that, and successfully perform in 4 critical dimensions: people, process, data, and technology capabilities. So what do you think about, what are your thoughts on that? How do you feel, how does this all fit into the current scenario?
Absolutely. Like, first of all, I think resilience is key. And I can say from personal experience, we experienced it at Zoom. So, there's a tremendous amount of change and frankly, adaptability that was necessary during for us, a very accelerated time. The world looked towards Zoom to help. And, we did, Manish, we, in a very short period, we rolled out the service for free in 25 countries for primary and secondary schools to keep education going. And we saw that there was 125,000 primary and secondary schools that relied on the service, including in India, to maintain education. So that had to happen quickly. So resilience in our mind means flexibility. It also means adaptability. So thinking about, the business environment as it stands, and then acting accordingly. We had to make decisions which adjusted our process. It adjusted the way that people worked. We had to add new employees in different countries around the world, and we did that at a very accelerated level during a pandemic. We had to welcome those employees on board. They had to be flexible, and none of these employees had met each other face to face. We did our base camp, or our new hire entrance, if you will, 100% virtually. And we had literally hundreds of employees go through that process in a very short period of time. And they became productive and connected very quickly. So I do think that kind of, flexibility and adaptability is important, and resilience. At the same time, you have to be innovative to capture markets as they request and require. So, we saw different demands in different places around the world. So that varied from India to Japan to Brazil to the United States to Canada. Yes, there was a similar world event happening at the same time, but how governments and countries were reacting, that varied, and we had to respond. And then last but not least, in our world, resilience meant thinking about, how do we retain our core values and focus on, for us, which was caring. At the center of it, it was always being focused on one another and ourselves. So how we cared for ourselves and one another physically, spiritually, and mentally. And then also how we manifested that, Manish, to our communities. It was real important for us to make sure that we were always listening to the customer, and that we were always paying attention to what they were saying and being empathetic. As we were going through this ourselves, we had to be strong and resilient. But we also had to appreciate and be empathetic to what our customers and our partners and our clients were going through. And we did our best.
So in these trying times, like you mentioned, so much happened so quickly, like you said, and you had to deal with so much. Do a few situations kind of come to mind that especially stand out? What kind, where you had to really, where I would say you literally kind of pushed to the limit, and how did you kind of come out stronger out of those kind of situations?
Yeah, I mean, we were again. I'll take the Zoom on Zoom example, because we were pushing the limits quite a bit. You got to remember, everything stopped, like for Zoom and for everybody else. So take myself, like I traveled quite a bit. More than 50% of the time, I would be in places like India or Europe or Asia in general, or Latin America or so forth. I lived my life 100% on Zoom, fully connected, screen time extended, you could say. So, we pushed ourselves to personally to try to adapt when we had to change the way, we might have normally addressed a working day. At the same time, we saw a lot of process change. So for us, at a system level, you can imagine at an engineering level, there was quite a bit that happens quickly. So you have to imagine how do you create adaptability in the cloud? Now, the good news with cloud computing, and frankly, the infrastructure that we built at Zoom, it was designed for really infinite capacity. Now, we never thought we would be tested at one moment at the same time, but we were. And, it's an incredible testament to engineers that could think about how you use the public cloud and how you combine with partners like Oracle and AWS and others, in addition to our 19 data centers, to continue to expand capacity to support, frankly, the elasticity that was required. And that was just ingenuity and flexibility with our engineers in our case. And I think also, that resilience comes with, being willing to change process. A lot of the process that we had built was designed for a certain stage, a certain capacity. To be honest, Manish, that all broke, and that was out the window, and we had to reinvent that process real time based on the requirements today. And I think that kind of flexibility for companies is real important, because you could say best laid plans are important. I think it's critical to have a direction, a strategy, and a North Star, which we did. But you have to have enough agility to say, if some things happen that will change your plans, you got to be willing to make adaptations, and we did.
So interesting keyword here is adaptability. And like you mentioned in the beginning, I can well imagine the engineering thing also, 10 million to 300 million, boom. That's as an engineer, you can understand the pain one has to kind of go through to make that happen?
You're an entrepreneur, so it's
True.
you built many companies yourself. You're well aware.
So again, now this is a crisis, right? And Zoom basically, like you said now, kind of reinvented, right? Partly,
Right.
everything. And it emerged stronger, much stronger, right? So this is like an inflection point in the age of digital transformation, so to speak, in organizations.
Yes.
What are the top 5 steps that come to your mind that leaders can actually take today in this kind of situation?
I think with digital transformation, it really touches every aspect of business, Manish. And I've been fortunate to be involved with cloud computing for the last 20 years. So I've personally seen you could say the changes that have been happening, and it's been dramatic. It really is, whether that's how we shop or how we travel or how we compute or how we connect with individuals. All of that's been adjusted very, very quickly, and it's been accelerated because of technology. I would say with digital transformation, there's a few things to think about. Number one is be aware. Be aware of what is happening environmentally, and that doesn't mean you have to change everything about your personal work or your professional life overnight. But you do have to be aware that these tools exist, and they're designed to make what might have been a task that was difficult before easier. And if you learn that skill, it's quite important. Number two is think about your talent at a transformation level as really now a world marketplace. And that's what we learned. And I think many of our clients and people that we work with realize is that you don't necessarily have to be centered in a major metropolitan to find great folks that can be part of the global economy. Now that they can be connected through digital transformation, you really have a global workforce. And that's amazing because it gives the chance to franchise in new employees that can make a difference regardless of where they are. Number three, with that in mind, still realize that there are sensitivities happening. People do feel isolation sometimes, or they are culturally not connected in the same way that they normally were. So I think during this time of digital transformation, we also have to be culturally aware and sensitive to the fact that people are different and they're in different places and different time zones. We have to respect that. I can't tell you how many meetings were scheduled at 2:00 in the morning, and you realize that people are up in the middle of the night. That's not right either. So you do have to be sensitive during cultural and digital transformation. Number four is also be aware of the fact that as we add people to this digital economy, access is real important. So, for example, recently, just the other day, I was in a meeting like this in Singapore, and we were talking to some leaders in Southeast Asia. And it was amazing to realize that there were 40 million people that got internet access during the pandemic. And in ASEAN, 70% now of the community is digitally connected, which is incredible. But realize that there's still ways to go. People don't necessarily have a device; they're not fully digitally connected. So during transformation, we have to provide access, and we have to help people find ways. Here at Zoom, we provide free accounts, for example, and that allows people to connect and be part of the economy. We think that's really powerful. Maybe number five is realize that this is still a moving target. I think, like our beginning of our conversation, hybrid work or the new normal. I think the new normal is still a definition in progress. What that is a work in progress. So, I think we have to have an open-mindedness to have conversations like this, to help define it together and realize maybe that there's not one perfect answer, but there could be a combination of things that work for different companies and different people. So those are five things that I'm seeing during this time of transformation.
Excellent. I just did note. I'll recap for everybody's thing also. So the first thing was be aware about the environment, basically, correct? Second was obviously the talent, and we have now access. Everybody has access to a global workforce. Along with all of this comes this responsibility of cultural awareness and sensitivity to everybody you are kind of working with. Again, the fourth point, which really struck home to me also, is access, basically, like you said. Imagine 40 million people, access is critical. And the last one also is pretty interesting, basically. You're right, the target pretty much is moving every year. I'm quite sure it's going to start moving every quarter, but we are dealing with a moving target at hand. So I'm going to jump into another question right now, which was interesting because you raised that point about sensitivity and cultural awareness. And, this idea of boundary has now become very porous, right? Since you're sitting at home and doing this, and I'm sitting at office and doing this, maybe, when it comes to cultivating a work-life balance, right? It started becoming very, and, a lot of people say it's lost all meaning, only that, it doesn't work like this or whatever. I'm just, as just talk. So how do kind of employers kind of, maybe how do they address that issue of team culture and collaboration in a hybrid world? You touched upon it before also. You yourself had to do so much hiring in different countries. So I know
Right.
it's a little bit of a generic question, maybe just some inputs on that, because this is something now we start hearing, people do complain at times, the boundaries are not respected. And, it's different things to different people. Some people have no issue. Some people really get kind of, so your inputs on that would really.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Manish, and it's one that we've got to be thoughtful about. And we all sort of break the rules, I think, sometimes ourselves. And I would say there's no binary answer, because there's a lot of pros and cons at the same time that tug at each other. So, for example, I don't have an hour commute for down to Silicon Valley from my house here, which is great. I save an hour of back and forth in the car and the expense of gas and so forth. However, I'm up at 5:30 in the morning now with a PC that's ready for me to go with meetings around the world that frankly have no boundaries. So I have to set some rules myself, as most people do. I think there's a time and a place to say my day starts here. In fact, a great piece of advice that was given to us recently by Jay Shetty, who, is
Yeah.
a great philosopher,
Yeah,
if
I've
you
read the
will.
book. Yeah.
It's a fantastic book. And he said,
Yeah.
you know what? Give yourself a virtual commute. I thought that was so powerful. So in other words, I'm not going to get on the computer at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to go outside for a walk and clear my mind first. And that's my virtual commute, which I've earned. So that's a boundary I think that we can place as an example during this digital time. The same token, while I do have a lot of meetings, as we all do, one after another, good best practices, take a break, have 5 to 10 minutes between, clear your mind, have a maybe a quick snack, if you will, et cetera. And while we all are on the go and working very intensely, I think productivity in many ways is up. There is a time and place to say, if you are physically at home, for example, take advantage of that. So, I mentioned earlier that my children are at Zoom school. Well, we both share the same lunchtime. I have never had lunch in the last 15 years and 17 years with my children. It's been a long time since I've had lunch on a daily basis with my son and daughter. We can do that here, because we're all together, but we have to stop to do that. And that's a conscious decision, I think, that we take. And then I guess as employers and employees, we have to know boundaries for one another. Just because we have connection doesn't mean we have to use it. A lot of people use the concept of presence on chat and otherwise. And, in our chat client, we respect the fact when people are offline. That's great. They should be. And we also want people to take breaks, physical breaks and mental breaks. So you have to be conscious to give people space. We also believe that some of the things that you might do for team connection can still be done. We do a lot of cooking classes on Zoom. We like to have social time together where we can. Sometimes watch a movie together and so forth. So all those are still possible virtually. I think you just have to know what's right for you and what the boundaries are.
Interesting. Thank you, sir. It's really great, your own personal boundaries. And I like that virtual commute part. It's an interesting way of kind of making time for yourself. So since we are kind of running out of time, I just have one more last question.
Sure.
I was going through your LinkedIn profile, and I saw this tagline: "Spreading happiness globally." It kind of, for some reason, there's this song called "Happy." I don't know if your kids ever
Of
saw this
course.
picture. Yeah. So the song came to my mind, and it really kind of struck me. So I just want to know, what were your thoughts on the tagline?
Well, it actually, the tagline comes from a very personal place, and it's really core to our culture and our philosophy at Zoom. Eric Yuan, our founder, started the company about 10 years ago in 2011 with one fundamental basis, which was happiness as core. And happiness is at a personal level, starts with you. It starts with the individual fundamentally being happy and content with yourself and your opportunities and grateful. And then it also believes that we bring that happiness forward. We should bring happiness to one another and how we work as a team, as a company, but we have an obligation of care for our community as well. And I got to tell you, Manish, it's been an unusually exceptional personal and professional journey over the last couple of years at Zoom, and I'm so grateful. and the gratitude comes from a fundamental level that I can do something that I love and I can work with people that I care about and I have the opportunity to impact people around the world. And that's around happiness. If we can make our customers happy and we can make people productive and allow them to work the way they want to, that's a gift. And, for me personally, I feel really grateful for that. As a company, we do too. And we know that we respect the responsibility that we have, but we know that the foundation is built on just a core principle of care and happiness. And that's pretty powerful, we think.
Thank you so much, Abe. It was a pleasure chatting with you. And
nice to see
sorry
you,
to get,
Manish.
it's really great. And like I said before we started, whenever you're in India next, and I hope you're here soon, we'd be glad to host you here in Chandigarh. And
I would love
it'd be
it.
an honor and a privilege to have you over here. Thank you
It's
so
a
much for
real
joining us
pleasure.
again.
Real pleasure. Thank you, Manish. Pleasure to
Thank you.
see you. And I hope to see you
Likewise.
again soon. All right. You take